Today on CityCast Nashville, it's time for our Friday News Roundup. Joining us is Alisha Haddock, member and former chair of the Nashville Community Review Board, along with our executive producer, Whitney Pastorek. Together, we're breaking down the TBI raid on Metro's hired law firm, who was conducting the investigation into the MNPD whistleblowers report, how the dismantling of the Department of Education will impact Nashville, and guess what, y'all? Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre are coming to town. It's Friday, March 28th. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. So we have to start with the biggest news story this week, and that is the bombshell development that the TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, raided the law firm who was hired by Metro to investigate the whistleblower who made allegations against Metro Police. To remind our listeners, this whistleblower, retired Lieutenant Garrett Davidson, raised concerns last summer that police had secretively worked with state lawmakers to do away with the Community Oversight Board, which was created by Nashville voters to oversee and investigate police conduct. Now we have the Community Review Board, which has limited powers and control over how they can hold the police accountable. Alisha, you've been a member of the CRB since its inception, and you're also the former chair. Can you tell us what this law firm was doing and how their investigation has gone so far?
Yeah, so I became a member in 2022, and since then, it has been one of the most fulfilling opportunities to serve Nashville residents, in my entire life. Now, the concern is that every time we look around, something's happening, right? Like something's going on in terms of MNPD and, of course, the abolishing of the Community Oversight Board. And now we are the Community Review Board. Now, I have to disclaim, I'm not the chair, so I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. I'm just stating the facts. A couple of weeks ago, we found out that the TBI raided the third-party investigating firm that was chosen by our local mayor, his administration. Butler Snow is that firm, and they were raided in November of 2024, okay? Now, mind you, it's March 2025, and we're just finding out that the third-party investigators law firm was raided by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations. It was a shocker, bombshell to say the least, but it raised concerns that the community had been talking about, right? Like they didn't think that this was going to be a fair and impartial investigation. They didn't think it was going to be transparent. And it's playing out the way the community really, their apprehension about this investigation. And the treatment of the CRB and the public during this is just abhorrent because the Community Review Board has expressed deep apprehension regarding the state's intervention and its implications for oversight and accountability within law enforcement. Given the one key allegation that's happening now, state intervention being prompted and propped up by our local players, like that's a problem.
How was Butler Snow handling the investigation up till this point? Had y'all been happy with the work that they were doing?
Well, we began to start to question, like, what's going on, right? Like, we hadn't heard anything. We hadn't heard an update. It wasn't about the contents of the investigation. We know that we wouldn't hear any information about the actual contents of the investigation, but where are we in the process? That is still the question. We know that they've been raided, but we have no idea, was the investigation completed? Has it been compromised? We don't have those answers. And really to say, we're not going to ask is really, not only disingenuous, but I think it's dismissive.
Yeah. And we definitely want to get to that. But also just to make our listeners aware, they also raided Lieutenant Davidson's home
back in September.
And we learned about that before we learned that they had raided Butler Snow.
That was on the news, right? We were well aware of that, but no one said anything about the raid on the third-party investigation that we all agreed needed to happen. So therein lies the problem.
But Alisha, who executed the search warrant?
So that's the question, right? We have all these questions that we don't have answers to. It's being said that our district attorney didn't know anything about a raid. He didn't know anything about, what was going on. He wasn't informed. I just don't understand why we're not asking these questions and why we're not receiving the answers to them.
You alluded to this, but let's get into it. How is the mayor's office and Metro Legal responding to this raid?
It's a more of a hands-off approach. So, from what I've read, it is, we're not going to get involved. This is a transparent and independent investigation. But I mean, that's a play on words, okay? And playing on words may buy you time, but it won't buy you trust, right? And so we're not talking about the contents of the investigation. We need to know where we are in this. Is the investigation compromised? Is this the end, or will we have to re-engage with another law firm to investigate these allegations? These were serious allegations.
Oh, no, it's a huge deal. And just to remind everybody, this happened, and we talked about this last week. This happened in that same summer where the Tennessee Three were getting ejected from the legislature, where the state had tried to take over our airport authority and our sports authority. They also tried to shrink our council size in half, right? So Metro Legal pushed back on all three of those things. But the one thing that Metro Legal did not push back on was the dismantling of the Community Oversight Board that we all voted for. So when Freddie came into office, this was already a very heated situation. And I think everybody, at least the voters that I spoke to at the time, believed that he was going to come in and rectify that, or at least push back.
I think we had great support when our mayor came in initially. When he first walked through the door, he was a great supporter of the Community Oversight Board. He helped with the transition so it can go very smoothly. But as time has grown and we've kind of moved toward the future, we are having more and more issues, and it's resembling our past mayoral administrations, right? And so I don't know what that looks like on the other side of the mayor's office. I just know we don't have that same support that we did when he first walked through the door.
What do you think changed?
I don't know. I don't know.
But you get to just guess because nobody knows.
Oh, I get to guess? Oh, my goodness. Okay. So I guess it is the dynamics of shaping cities, the functioning of how Nashville is governed, but then also putting priorities over people. I mean, that's just my guess, right? And so some of the same people that voted for our mayor are some of the same people that voted for the Community Oversight Board. And that's a really important topic. And so I think we have to hold space for both of these issues and topics. But what I want to say is that our law enforcement, our local law enforcement, it's pretty good, but we could be so much better. And so you have a group of community members on the oversight board or review board that's committed to having the best law enforcement in the country. And we need the help of our local administration to do that. And we cannot spend our time fighting our mayor's office and the state continues to come after us. It just doesn't make sense.
Do you think we'll ever learn the truth about Lieutenant Davidson's report?
Some of us may already have a version of the truth. Some of us who, have knowledge about what was in those documents in Butler Snow's law firm, I bet they know some of the truth. But what I will say is I think the commitment to knowing the truth is where we can find space and where we can intersect. Because if our mayor wants to know the truth like the public does, then I think he'd meet us in that space.
Well, let's talk about a big win for Nashville. The MNPD recently accepted the sexual misconduct policy that the CRB proposed last summer. Why did it take so long?
Oh, my goodness. Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe.
We love to guess. All right.
I know,
What's your
right?
guess?
I think change takes time, right? And for people to come to the table, and here's the honest to God's truth, we stay at the table. I think Whitney knows that, even if we're just talking about me, I'm going to be at the table. And so waiting for our local law enforcement to come to say, we want to do this with you, Like, we're doing this with you and we're going to do this together for all people, because we're talking about women in a male-dominated field, vulnerable populations in a male-dominated field. There probably will be issues of sexual misconduct. And so how do we shore up these policies? And so the policy that we provided was a best practice across the country. It was stellar. And so the International Chiefs of Police put their input in violence against women. Our local sexual assault center and practitioners in Nashville, they contributed to this policy. And so I think the time that it took was more about convincing our local administrators that this is a good thing. Right. And then, it finally happened. But we are ecstatic about it. I think we will be better off as a city and as a community.
And I thank you all so much for your hard work on that.
Thank you.
Well, we have to say, we've been really hoping that the mayor would come back on CityCast Nashville, but we haven't had much luck as of late. But that doesn't mean we can't ask him questions. So listeners at home, we really want to hear from you. What would you ask the mayor? So please call us at 615-200-6392 and leave a voice message. We'd love to play your question on air.
Yeah. WPLN has the This is Nashville that Freddie does go on, and you can always call in there and ask him a question. We just want to hear from you.
Yeah, just
we have standards. We're not desperate. But no, please call us. We're so lonely.
And now on to news potpourri. And Whitney, why are we calling it that?
Because all of the headlines feel like a bowl of dead flowers on a sad coffee table.
So last week, President Trump signed an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. It is, as always, worth mentioning that Trump cannot do this by executive order. It would require an act of Congress. But as we have seen throughout his administration, the resulting chaos from an executive order like this can still have massive impacts.
I think it's important for people to not panic, but based on talking to the parents that I know, I think that's easier said than done. If the Department of Education were truly abolished, it would have a deeply detrimental effect on our city and state's ability to provide all children with a quality public education. Unfortunately, Governor Bill Lee is in full support of this, according to an op-ed he wrote for the Daily Wire, which you'll remember is a conservative media outlet founded by Ben Shapiro, that's currently headquartered right here in Nashville. Governor Lee wasted no time in dreaming about how he would like to use the former Department of Education funds should the department be dismantled. And that comes to somewhere between like $3.3 and $3.6 billion a year. He thinks that those funds would be great to help his voucher program, which he expanded statewide in that special session back in January. Now, my first question is why he thinks that federal funding would show up if the department was dismantled. Like, why would they still just be like, well, the department's not here anymore, but here's a check for $3 billion. That part's unclear to me. But we definitely know that Governor Lee is a huge advocate of taking public money to fund the privatization of education and a lot of other things. Alisha, you've got a background in children's advocacy. I'm wondering what your take is on this, especially for kids whose families, for example, couldn't afford private school even with a voucher.
Right. And so, I think this is probably one of the more critical conversations that we need to be having all over, because we don't know what's going to come out of the Trump administration. We just don't. But what we do know is whatever comes out of it, Tennessee will be his loudest cheerleader. And so our governor has now, since he's voiced support of this crazy initiative to dissolve the U.S. Department of Education. Listen to what I just said, dissolve the U.S. Department of Education. This would be such a detrimental move, and it would be detrimental to families that are already struggling, okay? Look at our public school system that we are actively trying to reinvigorate and transform, on a daily basis, and then the educational inequalities we already have. And so this would just exacerbate them. What we need is some common sense legislators on the Republican side, because we know we have some on the other side, but how do we help people really think through this? Yeah, there probably needs to be some reform at the U.S. Department of Education, but to dissolve it, and then if Governor Lee is making plans already for the funds, then that must mean word has come, traveled to Tennessee to say, hey, yeah, we're going to dismantle the Department of Education, but we're going to shift some of those funds into your pockets, red states. And so what we want to make sure is that we're having a full comprehensive conversation about this, because this would be detrimental to communities that are already struggling. And so we need to be talking a lot more about this.
Well, meanwhile, the federal government has also cut student food programs. According to WPLN, the USDA is canceling $1 billion in federal funding for programs providing extra income for schools to purchase local produce. These cuts would impact over 38,000 students in Davidson County.
And also probably some farmers. Just throwing that out there.
That's a very good point. Tennessee has also decided to reject funding from the federal summer EBT program for children, which provided nearly 700,000 Tennessee families with food for their school-age kiddos during summer break. Instead, they're proposing to give families a one-time payment of $120. That's right, $120 total for the whole summer. Whitney, used to work in hunger relief. What effect is this going to have?
And she was good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to say deeply detrimental again. Look, these families are receiving this aid not because they're trying to sponge off the government. This is not luxury food. These are usually basic subsistence items. But we know that for many kids in our community, the meals they get at school might be the only meals that they get all day. That when they go home, they might not have a dinner waiting for them at the table. And in fact, there are a lot of kids who take their school lunches home. They hoard their school lunches and bring them home so that other family members, younger siblings, elders within the household can eat. When I was working with World Central Kitchen here during the pandemic at schools across the county, I would see vans pull up that contained members of multiple families in multiple generation households, all of whom had been relying on the school to ensure that they had balanced nutritional food. So I think this is a nightmare and frankly heartbreaking, especially in a state that prides itself on being a good Christian place. Alisha, your thoughts?
Yeah. On that good Christian place note, doesn't feel like it so much when we're talking about food insecurity for children and how they're able to grow and function. And then we're taking a hands-off approach or giving the bare minimum, right? So we go from 70 million to 3 million. It's like, hey, let's see if that works for you. And then we're in our communities, we care if kids eat. At least I do. And they don't have to be mine for me to care if they're eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I think this is a very, very much a moral issue. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, it doesn't matter.
A raging atheist like me.
A raging atheist. No matter who you are, children eating is everybody's problem, right? Like that's an issue where everybody needs to be, right? Like have something to say about it, because it's not about people milking the system. It's about working class families. It's about families trying to keep it together. We have people who just don't have enough. And our answer is cut the program and give them the least amount that we possibly can. I mean, it's evil, y'all. And so it looks like a lot of these issues will be on our plates. And like, what else can we handle?
And I do want to say, though, Nashville, y'all do a great job of taking care of each other, whether it is churches, nonprofits, community groups. Second Harvest is an incredible resource for our community. However, that brings us to our next news story, which is that also losing funding right now are at least 400 of our local nonprofits who are at risk of losing $1.5 billion of federal funds if their government grants go away. The Tennessean spoke to Catholic Charities Nashville. Alisha, that's a group that you and I are both really well acquainted with.
Yes.
They've already lost $500,000, a lot of it because they didn't get reimbursed for the work they do to help refugees settle here. But Alisha, you used to be the director of the Magruder Center in North Nashville, where you and I met. Talk about the work. Let's just talk about the work that Catholic Charities does here locally and how their loss of funding would trickle down to our most vulnerable communities.
Oh, my goodness. I was also the community-based services director at Catholic Charities. And so all of the community-based programming in Davidson County and Nashville, I led. And it is going to make such a negative impact because most of the funds are going to make sure people have what they need. You know, we go home and we're looking in the fridge trying to decide what we're going to have for dinner. Everybody doesn't have that luxury, right? Catholic Charities is a grassroots organization. And I know it doesn't feel like it, it doesn't sound like it, but they meet people exactly where they are. And so a cut like this, a freeze that really jeopardizes, you know, if people eat or not, I think we have to have some deep conversations about how we're going to fill that gap, because if we don't, then people will probably not be here.
Catholic Charities has said that they've made up, I think, about $260,000 of that with private donations. And I think that's also what a lot of people think is like, well, you lost your cushy government funding. That's okay. Just work harder to get donations. But folks, if everyone out there who works for the federal government loses their job in all of this, that is more families being plunged into poverty. That is more children who are being forced to go without food. And the amount of private donations that you can rely on starts to dwindle, because that means somebody who was maybe even just writing a $20 check a month to an organization that they loved, they need that money now for rent or food or gas. Like the system, the center cannot hold.
It feels like we're being backed into a corner, right? We're being boxed in on every side. And so one impact will lead to another, a negative impact will lead to another, right? And so what do? I mean, we have to speak out about these things. How do we make sure that people have food to eat?
I would continue to challenge our listeners out there to find places. Maybe it is your church. Maybe it's a community center. Maybe it's someplace like Magruder. Whatever it is that you want to do to help in this world, it's a great time to do more of it. Oh, soapbox. I'm on it. I will step off. Marie, what's our last thing? We've got one goodish news piece here.
That's right. Finally, we do have some action from the mayor's office on something.
Yay!
Nashville is suing the federal government alongside 5 other cities because $14 million in transit and infrastructure funding has been jeopardized by the federal funding freeze. Transit was Freddie's big campaign plank, as we all know, and getting the transit referendum passed was certainly a huge victory for him as well as our city. Alisha, how does it feel to see Metro Legal taking action here when you've spent so long trying to get them to stand up for the Community Review Board?
Oh, come on now, Marina. What kind of loaded question? You know how I feel. I think it goes back to priorities over people.
Priorities over people.
Right? And so we know what the administration's priority is. That is just, I don't know what else to say about it. Our eyes are not deceiving us. These are historical issues that we're talking about, right? Like making sure people have enough to eat, making sure people are safe, making sure that communities aren't over-policed, like all these big things that it does take time and it takes a lot of care. But are we willing to put that time and energy into these issues? And I think what we see is we know where our local administration wants to put the energy. And do we need to get around the city? Yes. But are people suffering? Yes, with other issues. And so we need to figure out how we can get all of this done. And so that's my soapbox, Whitney. But I'll tell you this. We have a lot of work to do, but we're not going to do it by evading questions and not coming to the table. I think it's time for us to step up to the plate and do the hard work.
Can I sing the song? I know Nicole's not here, but can I sing the song? Good news.
I'm so excited to talk to you, Alisha, as the executive director of Neighbor to Neighbor, a local nonprofit. Can you tell us all about it?
Neighbor to Neighbor is a Nashville-based nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering residents and neighborhood organizations. We've been doing this since 1997. And so we want to make sure that communities and neighborhood organizations have the tools and resources they need to help build safer, healthier, and more vibrant neighborhoods. And so we are so excited and so pumped to be serving Nashville neighborhoods because after what we've talked about today,
right,
we have
all
to be
these
more
dried
connected.
flowers.
Right, these dried flowers.
Yeah.
We were talking before we started this interview about how your goal, having just recently come into this job, is to bring neighbor to neighbor into the future. So right now, it's a lot of neighborhood associations that come together. And I think most people can envision sort of the demographic in their head of what a neighborhood association looks like. How would you like to see that and neighbor to neighbor change to better connect all of us?
How do we build a Nashville that works for all of us? That is the question. And we're doing it from a bottom-up approach, a grassroots approach. It's your neighborhood, but it's our mission. Building a place where everybody has a seat right at the table, where everybody can play a part. That's my specialty. And Whitney, you know that.
I
so
do.
We're going to do that for Nashville neighborhoods.
How can people get involved?
Visit our website. It will be under construction. So once you get on there, don't cringe. But end-to-end.solutions. We have resources there, how you can get in touch with us. But also, we're coming up on a Nashville Speak series. We're partnering with Centerwell to make sure people understand what's in front of them. Instead of responding, we're going to be leading these conversations. We have a property tax increase coming. You know, we have issues around and conversations around public education. This is where you will find not only the issues, but the solutions. And then, of course, we can't forget sustainability. How do we create sustainable neighborhoods and communities? That's going to be one of the main focuses of Neighbor to Neighbor. So I hope you join us, and then not only join us, but stick around.
That's amazing. We'll put the link to that in our show notes. Marie, you have good news. Would you like to share what it is?
Well, yeah. So, of course, we're all just overwhelmed with so much bad news. But I thought, how can I help? And that is, I'm going to foster a dog. Have I ever owned a dog?
No.
I haven't had a dog since third grade. I'm a little nervous. But yes, I'm going to be picking up Lottie, which I guess Whitney has identified as a herding dog, a sheepdog.
She showed me a picture. That dog is either a border collie or an Aussie, and she's doomed. Not the dog. Marie is doomed.
High energy. I was like, I want a low energy. I host a podcast from my home. So anyway, I went the opposite direction of everybody's advice, and I've gotten this. So anyway, by the time this airs, I'll be picking up Lottie from the Nashville Humane Association. I'm going to be posting about Lottie on our Instagram, so you can follow up and cheer me on.
She's real
and maybe
cute, y'all.
Give advice.
Congratulations, Marie.
Well, the sweet baby girl is waiting a hip surgery. So she needs a calm environment, and then she's going to have the surgery, and then I'll take her back and have her heal with me. Everyone's like, you're going to be a foster fail. So we'll see.
We'll see. Well, Alisha, I think people heard earlier in the podcast, you're a dog owner. That was not Wally barking for a change, y'all. That was Alisha's dog.
It was Zola. Yes.
Zola.
What is your one tip from being Zola's landlord that you would want to share with Marie?
Even in times of accidents, still love them. Right. Zola is like, she's turning 10 and she is getting, she's getting on up there. And so I take it that she's aging, and I chalk it up to old age. Just when they make mistakes, just continue to love them.
Well, listen, speaking of dogs, y'all, can I please talk about the thing that I'm most excited about from this week?
Yes, please.
Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre are launching a hip-hop themed lounge down around Lower Broad. It's going to be on 2nd Avenue next to the Hard Rock. And I'm pretty sure that this is all just an advertisement for their gin brand. And the reason I know that is that the name of the lounge is Still GIN Lounge by Dre and Snoop. So I'm just guessing. And then this will open April 4th. So it is right around the corner. They want to bring an elevated nightlife experience where West Coast swagger meets Southern soul, according to a press release.
I am here for this. I'm a gin drinker and I love Snoop Dogg. So let's go.
Perfect. I'm going to try to ask this as delicately as possible. Alisha, I have certainly heard in the past that Black people maybe are not always as comfortable as they might be in our lower Broadway environs.
You don't say.
Do you think that this will help, or will this be a bunch of white people going to drink Snoop and Dr. Dre gin?
I would probably say the latter. I don't think this has anything to do with Black people, right? Other than it being Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. It sounds really good. And it sounds like we are now, integrating hip hop with country, with, around the honky tonk bars. But is something telling me that this is all about profit, right? And so just a little something.
Wait, but can we still go? Can we all go and have cocktails?
She's like,
check it out.
No.
Are you like, I will not be caught dead there?
No, it wouldn't be right if we didn't go to Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre's downtown lounge at least one time. But what I will say is that, something doesn't pass the smell test, but I'm here for it, right? I'm glad that they accepted Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, but they didn't accept Beyonce's country album. I'm just saying.
I love you so much, Alisha.
Yes.
Maybe selective acceptance disguised as diversity.
Alisha, this really has been such a pleasure. I mean, this has been so fun. So I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. I do think it's supposed to rain.
Yeah, we're going to have some severe storms on Sunday again.
Okay.
That's 2 weeks in a row, kids. So
okay, well,
just
everybody
batten down the hatches. Alisha, thank you so much. Will you come back and do this with us again sometime?
I would love to. It's been so fun. Whitney, you crack me up. So, Marie, you're just the best.
Oh, you both are. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Another huge thank you to Alisha Haddock for joining us today. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson. Our executive producer is Whitney Pastorek. Our producer is Daniel Sumstein. Our Hey Nashville newsletter editor is Margaret Kingsbury, and our theme music is by Prop Jenkins. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!